for being here all week. I mean, you guys are iron men and women that have been out there. Appreciate them. You know, the meetings are important to us, but we also know there's a lot going on in your world. So thanks for being here, and hope that you got the access that you needed throughout the 2 or 3 days. An incredibly productive session for us here in Amelia Island. A lot of national topics going on. I'm proud of our board and our ADs as we continue to look at the national landscape and the leadership there. I'll probably start by first just addressing, which I know is top of mind for everybody, about the report this week, etc. Regarding some of our schools having conversations about the future. I mean, that just isn't news to me per se. There's not a conference in the country, and there isn't institutions in the country that haven't talked about conference expansion and the landscape and what's best for my individual or our individual institution, what's best for our conference, etc. So I appreciate that and understand it and understand the attention to it. It's no different than when folks come to Greensboro and to kind of take a look at the grant of rights and our media rights and those types of things. I encourage them to come. I really do. I mean, we feed them and all the rest of it. So that's not, that's not a warning sign to me from a standpoint of, something, bad may happen, etc. These are schools that are under a lot of stress and a lot of pressures, and I understand that. I really do. The reality is our conference is third in the country in distribution. Third. And as we look at the projections, at least in this decade, we're going to continue to be there. Now, we want to close the gap. We need to close the gap between the top two conferences that have started to run away from us. A lot of you have covered it and understand it and have followed it, but you see that we've been proactive, whether it be with Fishbait, whether it be with ESPN. We've had some tremendous meetings with them, and they understand being a 50-50 partner, that they're incentivized as well. We have this Success Initiative Plan, which I've told you about that before. How do we distribute revenue differently, potentially differently in the future? So we have multiple ways where we're trying to attack this. And again, as you've heard from me, I don't think there's one silver bullet or one move that you make that you close that financial gap. So all that being said, the league is strong. The league has been successful. 5 national championship titles this year, 7 last year, the most of any conference in the country. The academics are off the charts. When you look at the things our kids are doing on our campuses and in community service and social justice and all the rest of it, it's as good as anywhere in the country. So the group is strong, the league is strong, the league is producing, the league is being successful, and the rest of it. Let me talk a little bit about the meetings here, and then I'll open it up for questions from everybody. Football, I would just say a few things there. I'm really supportive of a few things right now that our coaches are kind of wrestling with. One, a national governance structure for football. We have to continue to refine and modernize FBS football, Power 5 football, and the ability to get things done in the governance structure. That includes, I'll give you a few examples. It includes our continued desire to have all student athletes on rosters participate in August camp. These student athletes participate all year long, and especially in the summertime, and then they're disinvited from going to camp. That's difficult. We have a health and welfare issue there and some other things. I know it's additional cost for some of our programs, but I feel strongly that we have to try to get that addressed, and I hope immediately. A couple others are a quality control analyst being allowed to instruct student athletes on the practice field. And we should revisit the unlimited official visits in football. We're always looking at expenses and how do you curtail that? I don't know. I mean, does a student athlete need 15 visits to go to make a decision. I'm not sure. So some of those kinds of things that the coaches and I talked about are important. You got the tie-breaking kind of missive there, and we will add the rock, paper, scissors at the very end if we can. So that's a must. Yeah, that's a must. I'm incredibly excited about the collapsing of the divisions and us having a chance to get our very two best teams into the ACC championship and then into the college football playoff. And then as we have an expanded college football playoff, it really does give us a chance to have multiple teams by doing that, by structuring it that way. As importantly, I'm fired up for our student athletes that over the course of a 4-year span, that they're going to travel and play every school in our conference, home and away. And that we've just gone too long with certain games not being played 6 years, 8 years. And so I think that those things are certainly benefits. Men's basketball, you know how I was disappointed I was about the selection and only having 5 bids. But that's on us to try to fix. And we had some really good dialogue. We had some outside consulting that occurred that helped us kind of look at it and really be true. Listen, nothing beats winning more games and winning the marquee games in the non-conference, and then obviously having a good, strong conference season. But I think, some of the narrative has to be changed, and we got to look at the metrics and the analytics of this thing. We got to schedule smart, and I think what you try to do is, if we can, programs are at different stages right now, and those that are just starting or have a new coach may not be ready for, the A++ non-conference schedule. So we're going to try to help our schools a little bit more with some of that scheduling and do it maybe in a more strategic way. I've been a member of both of those committees, men's basketball, women's basketball, and that's not an easy assignment. So this isn't like a disparaging comment about the committee and the committee's work. That's really difficult. It just is. And maybe the first part of it's pretty easy to do as far as selection and automatic bids and all the rest of it. But when you get down to those last 8, 10, 12, I mean, it's razor thin. So we have to continue to pay attention there. Women's basketball league's been, it's been phenomenal, and it's a credit to our coaches and student athletes. A few things though that I do want to comment on that maybe I haven't talked about or you haven't heard is, we do believe strongly that we should break out NCAA women's basketball broadcast rights from bundling, in the future with other championships that we have, whether it be baseball or lacrosse or softball. I think we're all really pleased, all of us, whether you're on a campus or in the media. Women's basketball is really getting the attention that it's deserved, and the level of play has been just phenomenal. So I'm happy and excited about that. The broadcast rights for women's basketball, President Baker will look at it, and we want to negotiate fair market value there. They deserve it, etc. And is there an application for a revenue stream for teams that are participating like there are on the men's side? Do you get units, or how would you maybe share some of that when we got to a point where it really generated some substantial revenue? College basketball summer initiative proposal. I think some of you have heard that's coming, right? And so what do we do there? More conversation needs to take place. Student athletes are asking about it. Maybe it's the ability to 3-on-3. Maybe it's ability to play some schools locally that are nearby, where you just set up something in the afternoon, not over the top like a whole schedule, but maybe there's an opportunity to play 2, 3, 4 games in the summer when you have these student athletes on campuses and they're working out and training. So we need to talk more, not only administratively, we need to talk to the student athletes a little bit more too, right? Because they need some time off, etc. But that has been percolating for a little bit. Proud about men's and women's basketball coming off of winning a majority of the ACC Big Ten challenges, and then looking ahead, fired up about the ACC SEC challenge. And I wish I could give you some of those games, but they're starting to be formulated. I saw women's basketball. it's, we haven't finalized it, but it's pretty good. It's really pretty good. I'll stop there, but I will say this. I got to end on a personal note, and then we can go wherever you want. So, prideful dad gets to go to Notre Dame this weekend and celebrate 2 graduations of our top two of our 5 kids. One's a track student athlete at Notre Dame. So, as I thought about this week, I knew we had these meetings, but I was thinking about, when these were over, how fun this will be for Laura and I as we congratulate the first college graduates in our family that we've raised. So last weekend, just real quick, was fun too, because we ACC track and field championships were in Raleigh, North Carolina, and so Laura and I went, but our son Luke, who's the runner at Notre Dame, did not know his other 4 siblings were going to be in attendance. So it was a really kind of an emotional time and a fun time. So anyways, that's the dad of a student athlete in the ACC. I'll stop there and let's talk about anything that you're thinking about.
Jim, do you feel like you have something to take to the presidents when they meet next week in terms of a revenue sharing model that they can vote on?
I don't know if it'll be voted on, Andrea, but we've already had some meetings with the board. We had a board meeting on Tuesday, a regularly scheduled bi-monthly meeting. The board is excited about it. We've had that group meet. It's a smaller group of the board. It's a subgroup of the board that met, and we met on Tuesday. This had been scheduled for yesterday, right, Amy? This had been scheduled for 3 weeks ago. There's great enthusiasm there. Now, the whole board hasn't seen it yet of the subgroup's work, but I do, and I, I've said it before. We just have to look at revenue differently. I've said that when I first came, and certainly say that now 2+ years later. So I feel good about that. Yes.
Of that subcommittee,
yes.
What presidents and chancellors are on that subgroup?
So that's chaired by President Ryan at Virginia. The other members are Kent Siverud at Syracuse, Susan Wente at Wake Forest, Jim Clemens at Clemson, and Rick McCullough at Florida State. Those are the 5 presidents on it.
How much extra could a school potentially get?
Yeah, it's too early to tell. Yeah, we're not that far down the road. I mean, that's to your point, Andrea. We're not ready to announce this thing in the next week or so. And so the percentages, Andrew, that'll be decided by the presidents on the formula and some of the metrics on how we put it together. But they've seen it, and it's got really good traction.
Jim, would you like this to go into effect to coincide with playoff expansion 24-25?
Yeah, I think so. The board will ultimately decide, but that would make some sense. Yeah.
Is there any
potentially, but maybe they do it sooner. So I wouldn't rule out anything. That will be the board's decision. Yeah.
Is there any piece to it under consideration for the television contract part of it?
I think we're still talking about that. Yeah.
Is being third good enough in revenue?
Yeah, it's never good. I mean, that's never good enough for anybody that's competitive. Of course not. Our schools have done a great job with the resources they've been given, and so what I understand is anything else that we can do to close that gap will exponentially help our schools. And I think about it every day. I do, and it is what it is. And I don't like going back to the past. I don't, should we be in this position or should that? And when we decided to do this deal in 2016, we had 15 schools that I think raced to the opportunity to have a network, to lock in for 20 years and all the rest of that. And I understand times change, and so that you adjust, and it's like anything else in life. It's not always a straight line. So we're figuring this thing out. But I would just say this. I know the reports and I know the conversations and all the rest of it. I feel like we have a really connected group. I really do. And I'm not just saying that. They understand what we're faced with, and having discussions and thinking about what's best for my school. I don't know how you can completely criticize that because that's the nature of this business that we're in college sports.
Based on some of the conversations we've had, some ADs were surprised, let's say, that other colleagues were having these conversations among themselves and didn't include the whole group. Do you feel like that's an accurate characterization? And then how did they work their way through resolving whatever feelings may have been hurt?
Yeah, I think there's lots of conversations, whether they be formal or informal. And so I don't know, Andrew, about, you know, who knew, who didn't, some of those types of things. But what I would say to you is, in those moments, I think they either splinter you maybe more, if that's, you know, the direction, or they have a chance to bring you together and galvanize it some and the rest of it. And I was not in the first AD meeting. They asked me to come at the end of the meeting to kind of give me a recap of what was discussed. I was in the second one and subsequent ones. And I think it was really healthy. I think everybody had a chance to talk. All 14, 15 schools had a chance to describe how they were feeling about it. And that to me is that has to happen. If you're going to get to an end result, then along the road you're going to have some of these bumps and you're going to have some of these things that you got to work through, and that's what they did. So, and I would say the President's call was active as well, and rightly so.
Does it bother you at all that this could be hanging over your head for 3 months from now, something else will come up, and do you expect this group of 7 to continue to have discussions, or did they assure you of anything that they're quiet down for now?
Well, what I've been told is we're all in this thing together, emphatically, right? We believe in the ACC, we believe where we're going, and we want to continue to work together.
Jim, you mentioned parenthetically fish bait. Can you give us any details of what they have suggested to you and ESPN for further monetization?
Yeah, I would ask you probably just to grab fish bait, because some of these things, David, we don't want to come public just yet because there's some competition in the marketplace. They've been with us to ESPN, and they have some tremendous ideas that we feel like could be implemented at a relatively short period of time.
When the television contract was signed, I think there was talk about the bookends periodically. Has that happened? Is there any chance of those numbers changing?
Yeah, not in the next few years.
Would expansion be a viable option to increasing revenue?
Have to look at every option, as I've said from day one.
Was that even discussed at all about?
We discuss it frequently.
I know the coaches, not surprisingly, are frustrated with things like tampering and how the portals has made that happen. Is there active things that you can do as a commissioner on a smaller level or on a national level to address some of those concerns, or is it kind of giving them an opportunity to vent when there's not maybe enough?
No, I mean, it's a good question. I did write a few things. I didn't know what you wanted to talk about this morning completely. But I went to Washington, D.C. last week for 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, and had quite a few meetings with congressional leaders. And so I would say a few things to tie into your question, and I'll bring it back. One is this reaffirmation that these are students, not employees. I think the employee thing triggers, something that at least right now across college athletics we haven't wanted to go down. Federal preemption, and this is this idea of name, image, and likeness. You have different laws for different states. We need some help in getting some standardization of what NIL is. I think it's fantastic. Student athletes should absolutely be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. But at the end of the day, if you're going to have intra and interstate competition, there has to be some level playing fields on that. And so some federal preemption that also I think is broad enough to cover the emerging threats in California. You're following the California bill that's occurring. The third is just some legal safe harbor and you've heard that from myself and other commissioners, is the amount of litigation, et cetera, it's you just can't withstand all of that. So at some point, that's part of the help we're trying to seek in Washington. We'll see if we're successful or not. But as it relates to name, image, and likeness, there has to be agent registration. There has to be a standardized contract. There has to be a registry. And then fourth, there has to be education on campus. So a registry is, and that should just be open. That should be, that should be available for schools to see each other, etc. And I think it allows at least a little bit of disclosure that we're not seeing in that space. The standardized contract, again, just everybody fills out the same thing, whether it's a $500 name, image, and likeness opportunity or a $500,000 name, image, and likeness opportunity. So that's part of it. You've seen some other commissioners that we've been there before. You see some others that are going to be coming. I spent some time with Brett Yormark of the Big 12 in DC. And I think a lot of the officials get that. Can we get them to act? Can we get them to move? Can we get them to help? I think is the bigger question. So back to the frustration piece of it. I get it. I mean, I get it. Everybody's howling. Not only our coaches, but I think all the coaches are howling because I think you would know better than me, having talked to them, maybe yesterday, but leading up to and including the meeting here is just they just want some structure to this. They get it. They get the ability of freedom of movement and the opportunity to go to different places. But that coupled with NIL, which is not supposed to be a recruiting inducement, has turned into one.
Jim?
I'm sorry. I know Andrew had something first.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
would all that stuff you're talking about not take like forever to implement, like, years down the road?
No.
In a best case scenario.
Yeah.
All that stuff just, Congress takes a while.
It does take a while. It does take a while.
So in the meantime, it's just the same old concept.
Yeah, for a period of time. I don't know, I think we're all just exasperated with, how do you fix it in the interim?
Regarding freedom of movement, are you struck at all by the fact that 11 men's basketball players this offseason have transferred within this
Yeah.
conference? And is that a good thing, a bad thing, or just indifferent?
I'd lean towards a good thing more than bad, in the sense of they stay in the conference, right? And our schools in the conference. I would just leave it at that. They stay in the conference and they have a chance to be an ACC student athlete. We have a chance to support them during their time, etc. But it is unique. It's. I think you did a story on it that I read, and I'm proud of the coaches on how they're handling that, because that can't be easy. But the level of strife, and I think has been at a reasonable level in that.
Is there any push from anyone to limit, like in some other conferences, players who transfer in the spring window of football being eligible to play that fall?
Part of the bigger picture. I will tell you that there is a call, certainly in the basketballs and football, to kind of narrow the window a little bit. The coaches feel like the window's too wide and there's too much uncertainty about what their rosters are. So I'm for that. That's a given.
Given your experience on those selection committees, do you think they are swayed by so-called media narratives about conferences? Because a lot of your coaches get irritated that the narrative is set by December and the ACC is up or the ACC is down. But are the selection committees really influenced by what idiots like us say?
Yeah. You call the group that. I wouldn't call the group that. I would say this, David. Having been on the committee, you are influenced. You are, because when you watch a game, I always watch the games with the volume on, right? Because I want to know if there's been an injury. I want to know, maybe they talk about the last game that maybe I didn't see. So I think it's very informative. I'd watch the halftime show to see, because they give a little bit of recap, and then they'll look at other teams, but other games. So I do think that they're influenced, but not in a way maybe that just completely distorts the process of reviewing teams, and then coming into that room and giving your reports on the conferences that you're responsible for. But I do believe it, and I would say that on our network, I want our network to be positive, and I've talked to our group about that. And at times I know our coaches are frustrated even with our own network, because they should be more glowing than they are, right? So, what's that space of really being a journalist and really being an announcer versus one that is kind of influenced because of who they work for, etc. So, I would say there is influence, and it doesn't have to be in a negative way, though.
Is amid all this speculation about, conference affiliation and expansion, realignment, whatever, what do you think is the end game with all of it ultimately, broadly speaking, looking years ahead? Is it, conference survivor kind of thing with two leagues trying to put folks out of business, or, what do you envision just in terms of where all of this is going?
Listen, we followed it for 100 years. There's been conference expansion and retraction and schools moving from one conference to the next. I don't think that changes. I think the cycle is connected to the media rights. Where does it go? I don't know. I mean, I've said it before. I think you got to have more than one healthy neighborhood. You have to have a healthy infrastructure. You want interstate competition. You want national competition from coast to coast, not just regional competition. And I get it, conferences have expanded and gone outside of footprints and all the rest of it. That's, what that footprint used to look like versus what it looks like now are different. So I think at the end of the day, we are better off together than a smaller subset, in the sense that it's been proven that national championships are great when you have multiple leagues competing for it, not just a couple. And I feel really good about the future of the ACC. I do, and I'm not just saying that. I do. We're working at it. We got great schools. We got a great story to tell. We've had great success. We got to close that gap for sure. But at the end of the day, as our people say, how much do you need to be a national champion in football and basketball and our other sports? Do you have to be at the very top of the level? Do you have to spend the most to be the best? I don't know that there's been an equation that is kind of connected to two. It certainly is helpful, and it certainly allows you a greater chance.
Every football season presents an opportunity, but does this one present an even larger one for the ACC from an exposure standpoint, given all the television windows on ABC and ESPN that the Big Ten vacates this year?
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity to perform at a high level, because of the windows that are open now for us on ESPN and ABC and obviously our own network. So no question, and we've talked about it as a league. We've talked about it with football coaches, and we've talked about it with our, the rest of our ADs and the league.
Jim, how much time did you spend on non-conference football scheduling before I ask my question?
Yeah. I was only with the coaches for like a little bit over an hour, so I don't know whether they talked about it. It didn't come up during my session with them because we were talking about these other issues. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because there's some concern among the athletic directors, if the SEC moves to 9 conference games, that some of their non-conference games against Power Fives might end up getting chopped with everyone else playing 9 non-conference games and not the ACC. So I'm wondering if you've heard that concern, because I know a couple of ADs have already had conversations
Yeah.
about games being canceled.
A little bit. We've had some initial conversations. I don't think we're ready to make a move just yet on it. And some of those are, some of those games are tremendous games, right? And we want to keep those relationships a lot, healthy and alive with not only the SEC but the other Power 5 conferences and our Group of 5 conferences as well.
Do you feel like if the SEC moves to 9, the ACC would have to revisit conference scheduling and what you do about it if some of the opportunities that you've had to play some of these bigger non-conference games start to go away and you just need to have better inventory as opposed to just filling a schedule with Group of 5?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to always adjust as the landscape adjusts. But I don't think anybody's ready to make some kind of declaration that we're going to go to 9 games just yet.
Jim, so many conversations about the revenue gap, but you hear Mike Oresco talk about how much he hates the Power 5 term all the time, that there's not really a difference in that. I wonder if you are worried at all or concerned, or you hear concerns from your ADs and coaches about a perception gap when there's 2 leagues making a ton of money and people start referring to a Power 2 or something like that. Does that, setting the money aside, does the image become an issue?
You have to think about those kinds of things, right? That's just part of it. At the end of the day, it's about competition and how you do in that competition. Nobody looks at the end of the day and says you won because you spent this and you lost because you spent this. So that comes down to making sure that we have really competitive programs, strong programs that are competing at the national level. So of course that's something that you have to think about and be prepared for sure.
It's kind of it might not be fair to ask you about,
Yeah.
if you asked this or presented this to maybe your television partners, but you guys have described ESPN as a partner with the ACC, and they have a vested interest in the conference's success. But if they're paying another conference so much more, is there anything else they can do to help the conference that they're invested with?
That's what we're working with them on, a variety of areas, including windows we haven't had a chance to be on before, which has a revenue outcome to it. Listen, appreciate you being here for the last 48 hours and kind of living in the hallway there.